Geraldine Hoogland. Very, very Hoogland. Where's that come from?
Dutch.
Dutch. Sounds to
Yeah,
be. I thought it had to
Edwin's
be.
Dutch. Yes,
Yeah,
his
yeah,
family came over from Holland in the 50s with that
yeah.
big wave of immigration from Europe.
Now I've been recent weeks actually kind of getting lost and submerging way deep into your Substacks, which are brilliant, and your connection to ancient Rome and where you bring everything out of. And I'll put this up for people, but Respublica, the public thing, that's the name of your Substack, correct?
Yes. Oh, you actually the pronunciation in the Latin is with the U, it's "u," so it's res publica. So,
Respublica.
like, when you say whenever there's the U, it's the "u" rather than, the as we say it. So, like,
Okay.
Sulla, the dictators, it's not Sulla. Remember that movie Tully, or was it Tully they made that would be pronounced Tully, like it's
Tully.
Sulla,
Right,
it's
gotcha.
res publica. That's how they
Res,
say it. That's all right.
res,
That's aside.
Respublica. So is
It's all
that was that
learned something new.
was that Latin?
Oh, that's the Latin, the way they
The Latin,
pronounce it,
right,
yeah.
right, right.
I do a
And
few semesters of Latin at uni, but then I would have loved to have done more, and I haven't. You've got to use it. It's like any language, and
yeah. Yeah.
I haven't.
We'll get into your background, how everything came about, but we kind of met, I think, online just through the COVID times where I was being a little vocal in my little echo chamber, and I think you'd seen some things I said, and I saw some things you were saying, and we kind of aligned. But one of the articles you had up recently, I think it might even be today, the one was erosion of democracy depends upon the will and actions of the people.
Mhm.
And is that, I might be getting it mixed up, but is that the one too where you were talking about how even though like through the COVID times, we had tyranny almost coming from the government side, but the silence from the opposition side was a major factor. Was that in that Substack?
That particular point might have been in an earlier one, but that one I did do today on the erosion of democracy, and that's actually a rework. I did some edits on it from an article that I did mid last year in 24, because I write for Liberty Itch, which is a libertarian publication. I wrote for them, but I thought of getting it up as a precursor to one I want to do in the next couple of weeks because it's relevant to what we're going through at the moment. So they back in the 400s, I guess 490 BC, they had this what they call conflict of the orders, which is like a secession where the plebeians downed tools and headed for the hills. You might have heard of that. People, it's like what's that term they use for people know it, that familiar terms. So, and that happened a few times in early Rome. And I noticed online a few weeks ago on X, they were posting about it on the 10th of December that they're calling for Australians to go on strike for a week. I don't know if that'll get off the ground or not. And I also came across some info about, as I said in that article, about the French Republic. It's the Fifth Republic, it's falling. Maybe it's time to get back to a monarchy. So a lot of the history accounts that I follow, ancient history and Middle Ages, they talk about this, democracy's eroding, it's in free fall. We've got to get back to a more traditional form, more stable government. And of course, I mean, look, you can have a leader, whether it's a republic or a monarchy, and they can either be good or bad. The reason the Roman Republic came about was because they had to get rid of a bad king. It was around 509 BC. So he was a bad king, so they toppled him, and that's how they formed their first republic with 2 consuls, which is like 2 prime ministers, 2 leaders for a year, and they share the role. So I just found it topical. So how I write is, and this was very organic, Nick. I didn't really plan on it. I just started choosing. There was a topic. It was topical for us now, and I'm never short of information from Rome, from the ancient world, to link it. So, and I kind of just evolved that I started writing that way. I mean, there is no shortage of very expert Roman historians, professors, and they write, very, very differently, and they've got more credentials than I have and all the rest of it. But because I had such an interest in politics as well, and particularly political theory, because I actually majored in that at uni as well. Mostly it took off with history, with Roman history, but I did have a major in political theory. So everything always fed back to the Roman Republic, because the Romans formed, like Greek democracy, of course, belongs to the Greeks, founding it like that, but the Romans perfected it really in a way that what we inherited as the 3 levels of government. So, and I think that's how my writing started coming about, and it's kind of just stuck that way. And people seem to like it too, because people don't read much these days. That you've got to keep it direct if you want them interested. So I've had quite a good bit of feedback from people that they enjoy it. So that's how that came about.
I've
And
been sharing with some family members today too, and they were really enjoying it too. And you got pieces like you can read in a minute, other ones are 4 minutes long, and there's so much information across them all. As I say, I put those links up, and please check out Gerri's Substack, because they're really good. And that'll also through that you'll be able to search and find other places where she's writing. So much of, I think, it's so relevant now, because so many people, you see what's going on around the world today, particularly with the United States, and people talk about the end of empire. People tend to look back and they keep referring to what happened in Rome and the craziness that happened to it all. But it goes well before that, because it was, we see how their political structure worked so well, but then men got in the way, and that seems to be what we're doing to our own countries at the moment.
well, that is right. It's cyclical. So there's a concept called anacyclosis, which is really interesting. And there's actually a whole website, if people looked that up, that actually find an anacyclosis.com, where they really go into detail about that. It was something that the Greeks first termed.
And what's that?
And
What's that mean?
It's just cyclical. You start one, you'll always end up. So the way if you think of a circle and it goes in about 6 different segments, but if you do 4 to make it simple, you have tyranny at the top, and that first quarter will be like how tyranny gets toppled because of unrest. And then you come down and you get down to democracy, and then through that, with democracy, you get apathy, as what we're doing now. We've had for the last, 50 years probably. We've become apathetic. That always happens with excess and largesse, which is what happens with all empires. It gets too easy. And then there's always the agitators there waiting. And then you start to get the rise of the oligarchs, which is exactly what we're seeing, until it comes back up and you're back up with tyranny again. Because the thing is, when I was at uni, because I went back after my kids went to school, and so I did it as a mature age student, and I just found it so fascinating that, yes, history repeats, but now I've lost my train of thought. But go back and ask me again what it was.
That's all right. Well, when we talk about that cycle, like one thing
Yeah.
that's often said is that, America became the first real democracy, and Australia had the first Labor Party and all that. Were those things kind of, do we forget that they did happen back in the Roman Empire, or were they different scenarios?
They all happened, but prior to that, the Greeks had direct democracy, which I think I think that's really the best form of democracy, because it's pure. But they were a city-state.
What does that
Direct
mean?
democracy is what Switzerland have currently. So it's smaller. They say that you can't run a direct democracy if you've got large countries like America and Europe, and although Switzerland do it. I don't agree with that. I think we could do it if we worked a way around it. So it's more that a gathering of citizens, and of course back then it was up then and over 18, but that's relevant to the time. And it was very much, out in the open, direct democracy. They didn't have representative democracy as such. So everything was more open. Of course, everything is open to corruption at some level. So then it was loosely formed them, and the Romans came along and structured it into, and that was after they expelled the kings, the last king of Rome, King Tarquin the Proud, they called him. And then they formed, like, they had 2 consuls, and then they had the Senate, which was the patricians, which were the elite, really. And they had the people. Now, the people didn't really have any rights until they started the secession movements, which is why what I want to write on next month, which I kind of mentioned today in that article, because I find it interesting, because I think we've come back to that. I mean, we've become unruly. We've got, I mean, let's face it, our politicians, you could count them on one hand, the worthwhile ones.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're not even governing. Where is Anthony Albanese? He's never here. We might as well be shut down too, like the Americans are at the moment, because it's a farce. It is an absolute farce. So we're in chaos, and there's very little organisation. The money, I mean, how long can the country keep going with the welfare bill, the productivity, what that news out from Victoria the other day about, is it 9 out of 10 jobs are government backed? How productive can we keep going? It's
Yeah.
unsustainable.
It was one of the things that really shocked me during the whole COVID thing, because prior to that, I was pretty much, I'd be a swing voter. I'd go from one party to the other, depending it was sort of who the personalities were, more or less, and what they were saying. But what really shocked me, and when the COVID thing hit, first of all, I had some friends who were like on the Premier's Council, they called it. Mum was a lawyer and mum was a senior police officer. And it struck me that this thing really seemed like it was like a design, something or other, because never before have we seen over an illness situation countries over a weekend basically shut down and kind of go in this one direction. And it's almost like the intelligence agencies all said, this is something we don't know what's going to do. We have to take emergency steps and do it quick. I get that they might not have known what was going on about that. But I said to my friends who were on the council, I said, this sounds really sus to me, that, like, you've never seen this happen before. And they were like, oh, no, we're told it's a natural thing. It's going to be so bad. And we're going to take kids out of school. And it's going to, okay, whatever. And then, so from what they said, my fear was we're going to be walking down to Aldi and seeing people falling over in the streets and passing out, and there'd be ambulances not having enough to carry people and everything else. And as I looked around, and it was like, no, we were 6 feet apart from in the shopping centre, but if someone lit a cigarette up down the other end of the room, you'd be able to smell it, because the air doesn't travel 6 feet. It goes all these things. And we're just told all this stuff, which to me was so obvious. And I would have thought amongst the politician groups, there would have been, the different parties, especially in the opposition, there would have been people saying, hang on, our parliament under emergency services, we now got the Premier and a couple of advisors just making all the rules or directives. And we had no parliamentary system. Whereas if it was a time of crisis, I thought that's when we should have had the brightest minds of, working collaboratively together to make sure we were on top of everything. But there was just one lot of people who were allowed to speak, and the others were all just shut out because of
Yeah.
directives by 2 or 3 people instead of our political system working. And I would be writing letters when we had stuff happening in our music industry to the human rights, head of the human rights thing here in Australia. I've forgotten the name now, director or whatever it is. And you never get an answer or anything. And they absolutely did nothing about people's human rights during the whole thing while it was done. It was all shut down. There was no debate about, wider debates or everything. And I just at that point thought, we're certainly not a democracy, and we certainly have, our politicians are absolutely doing nothing. And then I sat down with the minister at the time for sports and multiculturalism, when they were letting all the football games go on, and horse racing never shut down once. But, entertainment was totally used, and he lied to my face saying, well, we're not favouring sports over entertainment. But of course they were, because of the gambling money that they make out of the taxes and everything else. Music entertainment, they used to actually build fear into the young people, so to make sure they followed the dates and everything else. It just became so blatant to me that we don't have politicians at all that have a voice, that are willing to have a voice. And that was my kind of big, my big kick that said, yeah, this is really screwed up.
Revelation. Yeah. Look, I agree with you. And I mean, Edward's a builder. But they kept Bunnings open, but shut down the small businesses. Yeah. How does that work? Look, clearly we were scattered around the place, that all through the country, some of us knew something wasn't right.
Yeah.
But most people did fall for it. You're right. And since then, well, particularly, it's become evident since then that politicians, I don't think, have any power at all. I mean, we're run by the bureaucracy. I mean, you watch the senators, well, with all the COVID stuff, the last couple of years since they've been doing Senate estimate hearings, if you ever watched them, the bureaucrats just fog the questions off or will take it on notice. They get around it somehow, that they never answer the questions. It's not getting any better.
Yeah.
And it is, it's a real shame. I don't know. Well, if we're in the ancient world, it fell monumentally, but of course, like us, it doesn't happen overnight. But when it happens, it took force and war, conflict to do that. And the only way, that's what it was we were getting back to before, when I lost my train of thought, was the anacyclosis. And the thing is, the only, in history, from what I've seen, that really the only way to fix it, the chaos, is to install one person. And it's almost like a benevolent dictator in a way. Some people talk about benevolent dictators, meaning you'd have to have somebody, because that's what the Romans had. They had in their constitution for times like this a dictator. And the dictator would come in for 6 months to clean everything up, to fix everything, and then they had to step away. And that was used quite a few times in early Rome. And I got quite interested during my studies when I did my honours thesis, and I started a master's year as well. I got halfway through that, but I got sick, so I had to let it go. But I just developed such an interest in dictatorships, not because I like them, because I believe it's a key. It helped me understand what we're going through right now. When a country gets so out of control, how do you get it back on track? You need to get an excellent person, an individual who's got to be, quite exceptional, that doesn't want to take dictatorial control in that evil sense. And they were able to do that. In ancient Rome, there's one of the guys they had, Sulla. They called him Sulla the Butcher. Like, he was really brutal. They had terrible prescriptions then, but they made him dictator to fix the problems at the time. He did that. He changed, he reformed, he got Rome back on its more traditional footing, and he voluntarily stepped away. Then went back into public, just life, walking around the streets, going to the theatre and all the things he liked to do. And in an ideal world, that's what you really would like to happen. Someone strong enough to be able to do that. I mean, people accuse Donald Trump that, over in America, the left, they say he's a dictator. Well, he's not in a bad sense. He's strong. He's like a strong man. I mean, look, there's no denying it, that you've got to have a leader who doesn't care what anyone thinks, and they're going to be branded a certain way, but who have the temerity and the fortitude to be able to bring their countries back to a balance, because we don't have that. And that's why I was very interested in that area of Rome. They're part of the Constitution, because I see that really as the only way. I mean, people are not going to suddenly say, "Oh, I don't want all the handouts now. You can have it all back," and it's not going to work like that. It never has worked like that. And
It's interesting. We were talking. Sorry, did I interrupt your stream there?
oh, no, I was just saying that's why that interest in Rome, I think that's why people do get all roads lead back to Rome. They have it, especially in America, because their founding fathers based so much on the Roman Constitution. That's where they got a lot of that from. So it's fascinating. So it's really trying to find that person that then won't misuse their power. And the man that really I love him, Cicero, and we wouldn't know about so much about Rome without him. That was what he devoted much of his life to, was finding that person. He hoped he'd find that in Julius Caesar, but Caesar really only wanted to dominate himself. So I think it's so important. I think we're facing that right now because I don't know any other way we're going to solve this. Because people won't voluntarily give up all their handouts. I don't know how
What
that's gonna happen.
staying back in Rome for a moment with Cicero and
Cicero.
Cicero, sorry, who's obviously the kind of like the voice in the courts that am I correct, right? Yeah, and when he backs,
Lawyer, and then he was
yeah,
also a consul
yes, yeah.
as
So
well.
and saw Julius Caesar come to power, and sorry, was Augustus Octavius after Caesar? Which one was?
Yeah, well, Octavian was the one who, defeated, Antony and Lepidus.
That's
Because
right.
after
So
yeah.
did so more we all know Julius Caesar, of course, but Octavius, was he the one who really kind of set up the structure that Cicero had a vision for?
Oh, and well, there's debate. I mean, historians differ on all this stuff. It's how you read it yourself, the primary sources. After Cicero realized he that Caesar wouldn't be his ideal director. That's what he called, like, people refer to benevolent dictators, meaning is that he called it an ideal director. And he tried with Octavian. So Octavian was Caesar's adopted son. So he tried to, and we've got books and letters that his correspondence that he's written to him, like he was trying to be a mentor to him. But Octavian, who became Augustus, um, that's where my study, really in-depth study, stopped at the beginning of the empire. So I don't know I'm not an expert on Augustus, but he did a lot of good things for Rome. He stabilized Rome. He stabilized that. He was the one who invented the standing armies, and he was in power for a long time. But I think he had a mean streak.
Yeah.
And in the end, why I don't like him is because he sacrificed Cicero. At the 11th hour, because Mark Antony wanted Cicero to be on the top of the prescription list, so he gave in and did that. And Cicero had been really good to him, so I sort of said, "Oh, well, you betrayed the one man who was trying to elevate you and get you to do the right thing."
Yeah.
But he did reward his son. He did reward Cicero's son.
You got your doggy there, mate, joining in the chat.
Yes.
Yeah,
Just
sorry. So welcome before the chat, and we started recording, and I won't go into the detail now, but I had a really unique journey in China for 10 years, and but had some unique things happen in the music industry, which in a very unique way got me to see what was happening. I became very close to a lot of very senior government people over there. Um, Look, China has made a move from being nowadays being ruled by the gun to very much honestly being ruled by continually raising the people's standard of living. And when you've got 1.4 billion people, China, more so much as a communist country, I see China runs a bit more like a company where you've got your board of directors up top with the party, and there's actually 7 parties in Chinese parliament. You know, you've got multiple parties, but the Communist Party is the dominant party, and will stay the dominant party. And there are votes that happen within the party through the whole system. But at the very local level, you have your representative, and people actually get surveyed. I think it's about every 3 months on how their local representative is representing them. So the people do get a voice at that level. But with the shift, so China had a lot of problems with corruption within their governance systems, and it wasn't so much necessarily the top levels. What they would do at the provincial levels, you would have towns where one family would control. You know, one of their family members would be the chief magistrate, one would be the chief of police, one would be the top of the tax department, and for decade after decade, they would rule those places and become like a mafia. One of the things why President Xi is so popular with the people, one of the first things he did was put a broom um, through the government companies and government departments, and pulled out a lot of corruption. Officials got death sentence, they got life sentence in jail, and they would do an audit on the major companies and actually release that information in the China Daily, and that people could see what was happening. Was people going, well, we're actually getting transparency here. But at the back of all that is, and people don't realize, Chinese politicians can have a lot of power, but they'll never be wealthy in big ways. Chinese businessmen can be very wealthy, but won't have the power that the politicians had. So there's a separation in a big way between government and business, and the businesses do come under the power control of the government. In America, I see their biggest problem is that the big businesses and big money run everything. They kind of own the politicians. Yeah, politicians should have their sponsors written on their shirts like racing car drivers, and they run everything. And that's clear what happens over there. I think their biggest challenge is, even though you get someone like Trump in who comes as a strong person, he's still battling against these money interests. In Australia, and we'll soon get to the point that you've run for parliament, and I'd love to get your story behind that. But in Australia, my assumption is we're not as controlled as America by money interests. We are controlled by the party interests. But what is it that limits our politicians in being good politicians? What's it come down to?
Uh, I think the bureaucracy. Now, I had a politician who was told me once, who I met last year, he was in the Howard government, and he said people just don't realise how strong the bureaucracy are. I mean, when I was younger and naive, and you thought the bureaucracy was there working for the people, and they served each government, each party that came into power at the time. But I think COVID displayed that once and for all. I mean, power shifted. What the politicians were standing behind these bureaucrats. They had all the power, and they do have all the power, I think. And the size of them, it's the sheer size of it, Nick. I mean, they are not productive. You can't be in government and making this country strong and wealthy, and you're not producing anything. And for decades, both parties, well, not so much the Labor Party, but the Liberals would say that they'll put a broom through things, but they don't. And why does a Prime Minister's office or any of the leaders' office need 100 staff? Or I don't know if that's the right number, but they have so many staff. Why? I have a philosophy that I think they should have kept them in the old Parliament House, cramped with cramped conditions and minimal staff, and almost, if you really want to fix it, apart from having, the benevolent guy come in, basically shred it right back to when it started, and they keep their day job and they get an allowance. Now, that is representative government. But of course, we're in a global age. Let's say, oh, no, you'd never do that because we're a global society. So blah, blah, blah. But that's where I think the first thing should start. The bureaucracy is too powerful. And it just seems to me the politicians I've met along the way just all say that. And to me, it's showing. It's showing. Now, I mean, you look at the Senate estimates, what we talked about before, the bureaucrats just keep pushing back away the questions. I'll take it on notice. I'll do all this. It's a case in point today too. I saw Alex Antic, who I really quite like him, I think, because he was the only Liberal who's ever crossed the floor over the misinformation bill that we defeated last year. Today he's been the first Australian politician to raise what's coming out of the US at the moment, which is an area quite close to my heart because we have a severely autistic daughter. And it's not something I've just had to get on with life over the years, but now the evidence is dropping. It's indisputable from Robert Kennedy and all the doctors. And even today, I thought I knew a lot, but there's still things I'm finding out. Alex actually asked the questions. Was today's truth yesterday, and I watched part of the hearing. And I mean, he's brave to do that too, because I know how topical and controversial this is, which it shouldn't be, because now the figures are coming out, and I know we're in the minority that our family stayed together over this issue, and it's going to get big. It's going to come out. So he's good. So I think he tries, but behind the scenes, I just think, how can you battle a bureaucracy that big? And that has to change if we are going to maintain our democracy. That right now I can't say we even have one. We have a soft totalitarian. There's one of the professors wrote a book about that years ago. We're a soft dictatorship. That's what we are.
Now people say, okay, we're having this conversation. Well, if you really want things to change, we'll get out there and take some steps to change it. Well, you obviously believe that and ran for
I
Parliament.
did, and look, in hand on heart, it was not something I ever aspired to. I got involved in politics. I joined the Liberal Party in 2007, the big change, the Kevin '07. I was studying at uni. I was doing half history and the politics, the political theory, and I just got interested in it. And I thought, oh, I'm going to do something. I'd been studying for 2 years, and I thought, well, it's great to study, but I need to know about it. I mean, we voted mostly Liberal. Well, my husband did. He was always with small business. When I was young, I probably more swinging voter, but my adult life has been Liberal. So I took myself along to the local campaign office in that election year of 2007, and I just started helping. And I loved it. So my dream job would have been like to work in campaigns, either having the states. I just love campaigning. I learned about it, and then got years later helped run campaigns, federal, running sort of the ground campaigns, because I love organising. And it was the only reason I did it, and I left the Liberals over COVID, like a lot of people did, when Scott Morrison said, we're going to make this vaccine as mandatory as possible. And I already knew we lived with a severely vaccine injured child. Our life was torn to shreds. And it was only because we're strong people that we even are still standing. And I thought, you're not going to tell me what I'm going to put in my body. How dare you? You don't have the right. You're a normal human being like me. And that was it. Like, that was it. I was out. And then I was politically homeless for a while. And then when Craig Kelly, I watched him take them on alone in the chamber, in the lower house. And then, he was good. He didn't hold back. He was brave. He had to cop the slings and arrows. So he joined UAP. And that's when I thought, oh, bugger it, I'm just going to join them, and I'll help whoever runs. But the day, I still remember the day I decided that's it. 3 days out from putting the nominations in, Gerard Rennick had publicly released the letter he wrote to Scott Morrison, because Gerard then had discovered the whole COVID thing, and wrote to Morrison, released it to the public, saying he's going to withhold his vote if he doesn't address this. There's something wrong. This is not right. You can't force people, blah, blah, blah. And I just got it in my head. Why should Gerard be the only politician, or one of like two, because Craig had left by then, in the Liberals standing up for what's right? And I don't know, it just got to be in my bonnet. And I thought, I've been in politics 18 years. I've helped them. I know them. Why shouldn't I do it? Our daughter was pregnant with her first child. This was going to be our first grandchild. We'd really, gone through to hell and back several times with our eldest daughter and the journey we took there. And I thought, why not? I'm just going to do it. And I just did. And then, honestly, it was actually really different to what I thought. I loved it. It was really good. I mean, yes, we knew we wouldn't win, all that sort of thing, but it was the best thing because I met some amazing people. Now, I have to say, every chance I get, I always say this, because people need to know. I mean, Clive may be a controversial character. I mean, we got to know him, but he was very good with all of us candidates. But UAP attracted first-class people right around the country. Absolutely amazing individuals from every walk of life. And it was really sad that he just didn't do anything afterwards with the party, with branch structures and all that sort of thing. So it's kind of like we all came. Ralph Babbitt was the only one who got elected, and it's kind of then just fizzled away. And I've just been politically homeless ever since. But I'm glad I did it. I really saw the other side. and of being a candidate. Sadly, 8 weeks before the election, I broke my foot badly. So I was in a wheelchair for 6 weeks, and which was so sad because I knew how to run campaigns. And suddenly there I was, and I couldn't get out and do what I knew had to be done, and I loved doing. I could go till midnight doing these campaigns. I mean, it was just fantastic. So that really was a shame, and I didn't even do anything silly. While we were out campaigning one day, standing by the cornflutes, when they do, just standing there. We weren't even walking, and we were on a grassed area sort of down the road from one of the primary schools, and the grass seemed flat where I was, where we all were, but underneath there was a massive pothole. And then when I was walking quite slowly, just straight down it, and it was the angle, the depth of the hole and the angle my foot went, broken in so many places. I was off my feet for 6 weeks. So I only had 2 weeks in utter pain in a moon boot to do some campaigning.
Hey, quick commercial break. Big shout out to our sponsor for today's episode, which is me, Nick Phillips. Look, I've got to thank myself so much. I couldn't be doing the show without me. And if you get a chance, check out the sponsor's website, www.nickphillips.com. Check out my music, my videos, my bio, all that stuff, and maybe contact me and book me for a gig. That would be great. But thanks, Nick, for your sponsorship. Back to the show.
But that's fine. That's the way it was. It didn't work out exactly the way I had wanted it to, but it was such a great experience.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that you actually, threw your hat in the ring and you were in there doing it and putting your actions behind your beliefs, which I totally admire.
Like we were at a markets once, and these 4 teachers came up, and a lot of teachers love to fluff their feathers up and puff the chest out and tell me, what am I wasting my time being with Clyde? And the arms would go like this. I mean, we had to cop a lot of that because that's just, we knew that going in. Yeah. We weren't there doing it for Clyde. We had a vehicle, a lot of us, that most of us wouldn't have had, because I had no interest in running ever before. I mean, had the Liberals had a backbone and not did what they did, I wouldn't have left and maybe run with them.
I think a lot of people felt the same. I mean, I know particularly from my gig economy, my circle, so many people were disillusioned with the majors are looking for something different. Now, from an outsider looking in, I agree with you. When I looked at what Palmer's Party was doing, I looked at the people they had running, and there looked to be so many really good people who were running.
Excellent.
What really disappointed me was, sure, Clive can get a headline, but he's a divisive person in the overall community. He scares a lot of people off. Yet everywhere you drove, you'd see posters of Clive and Craig. And I like Craig, but being beside Clive. And honestly, for people who were confused, it put them off. Whereas I felt at the time we spoke about that time where.
Yeah.
I think if they'd put a focus on local people running rather than on Clive, they could have done so much better. Now, I introduced you to someone at the time who had a lot of media background. He actually helped someone in North Queensland get elected, and we spoke about what is social media savvy, because the major parties are terrible at their social media, absolutely terrible. And there's a real way to work that effectively, but at the time you were explaining that the party wasn't giving you any financial support for doing any of those type of things. And I think that was their big mistake in not backing those local people that they'd put in place, and they put a focus on Clive, which made it divisive. And what ended up happening was the people who were wanting to vote for something different ended up voting for the Greens, thinking they were doing something different, which was just voting for Labor. And
well, I certainly, and I assume most of us felt the same, that we didn't realise that we wouldn't be having local promotion, really, the focus on the local candidate. Yeah. I think we went in just expecting it would be like that, but it wasn't. So I agree with you. But look,
and I think that's a lesson. Yeah, I can bitch about that myself, but looking for a lesson to take forward. And you hear quite a bit of talk at the moment about the chances of maybe a new party being formed or another alternative being formed with the independents and everything. Is that a reality? And do you think if it is a reality, there's things we can learn from what's been done in the past to make it better and actually make it a...
I can't see it happening. It could, in theory, it would work. My personal opinion is the Nationals should split from the Liberals and they should combine with Gerard Rennick's party and the Libertarians or even if they don't merge, form some sort of an alliance. And One Nation. But look, One Nation will never do it. Pauline is a figure unto herself. I mean, I like Pauline. What she's been through and survived is just amazing. But again, there's no branch structure in One Nation. I believe they may be starting one now, but for 20 years, where have the branches been to build a party? Because you need to have local branches like the Liberal Party and Labor do, because you need to meet. That's how you get the minds together. I mean, it's not working great now because it's all factionalized, but in theory, that's how it once worked like that. So it can happen. It should happen. The country needs it to happen, but they won't do it. Their egos would never allow for it. Who's going to, who they want, one of them, they'd each want to run the whole show. And that they have more in common than they do not. And it's such a shame. It really is such a shame. But now, just lately, I've been thinking it's probably the only way out is for the Nationals because they have a brand already. And I think they could do it if they branded themselves. More people say, well, they're only noticed in the country. Rural areas, I don't agree with that. I think the Nationals, and that's quite widespread and definitely could be.
So, okay, so take what things we've spoken about, like going back to Roman history and what we've learned with the cycles that happen, and where Australia's at now, and where global politics is at now, and what we're all facing. How I don't want to put this the wrong way. How do you see a way out?
That's the big question. I mean, that's what a lot of us ask ourselves every day. And I honestly, I don't know. I fear for it some days. I think, is Australia lost? Where's I'm like a lot of people. I mean, I think we have a right to have and defend our own culture. I don't like being told I'm a racist because I say that, because I'm not at all, and nobody I know is. So we're having those domestic cultural issues at the moment, which is really sad. And I don't know.
Would you be likely to run again at all?
No. That was the one time.
Okay. Well, and having said that, I do have a follow-up question to that. I don't get a lot of people watching this, but it's growing, and we get a lot of more younger musicians watch it as well, and people who have got wanting a positive outcome for the country. If a young person wanted to take steps into politics and actually make changes in their own way, it seems to me that one thing that could happen through people like yourself and maybe others who've had similar experiences to you and the knowledge you have is there a way that an advisory board can be put together or something to advise on young people coming into politics and what they could be doing or how they do it?
Well, I think, that is a good idea. Well, have a mentor. I am a big believer in, this whole class divide we have. I see it coming up again. I see it on social media. A lot of the younger ones saying, boomers need, not that I'm a boomer, but I'm sort of in between. I'm more end of Gen X, but they got to get out of the way. And it's like anyone over 40 shouldn't have a say. I mean, and some older people are putting young people down, generalizing. We need to get back to that. And the Romans did this well. Mentors. I mean, they didn't, you weren't allowed to start getting into politics till you were 30 anyway. And there was what they called the ladder of offices where you had to go up. You could never be a consul under 40 or anything like that. I mean, they were the senators, and the consuls had to be of, had some maturity, which I still believe is really important. You can't, we were both 20, right? We were all 20 and 25 and 30. What do you know about life? You don't start knowing about life until once you hit over 30, mid-30s, probably even 40, really. But I don't think they should not go in. But if they go in, they need to have a very good mentor and someone that they're prepared to listen to and trust. And that is, so your suggestion of an advisory board is a good one.
Because when we look at, what's the hope for the future and everything, obviously, clearly in America, we see with Turning Point and everything like that, there's a real energizing of young people getting interested in the political system. And through people close to me, I see a very similar thing, not to that same level, but very similar interest happening. I'm not talking about the whole generation, but there's lots of the younger generation I find are more switched on than I ever was as a young person, and actually are more.
Yes, you're right.
They're using the internet better. They're informing themselves better, and they're not just people I'm thinking about in particular. They're not just swallowing what they're told; they're questioning, and they're finding their own answers. And I think if we look at what's the way out for Australia, I think it's in our young generation.
I
And I
absolutely
think
will agree with you, Nick. And I think that the only thing is, I say don't let them go into the major parties. Not the way the Liberal Party is today. That I think that's why there needs to be a move. They could actually energise or get that going, get that whole
and for people like you, Jared Rennick,
into more traditional, if you want to use that word. Traditional should not be a dirty word, by the way. I mean, tradition is just something that has proven to last, generation after generation. If something works, you know that. You're in music. If something works, why break it? You can improve on it where it needs to be. But I agree with you. They because they've got resources we didn't have either. I mean, they've got
absolutely,
information in their hand we never had at their age.
and they've seen the bullshit. And they really are much better at smelling bullshit than I was at my age, because I just got to see Channel 9, I got to see the Courier Mail, that was it. They've actually get a wider
That's right.
perspective, and they know they're so much switched on. And I think, we spoke briefly about how on the phone about how people like Jared Rennick are very focused on talking to local
Yes.
communities and things. And I think for people like him, whether it's people in the Nationals or these Indies, whatever, I think I would like to encourage them to really figure out how we put that focus on creating a mentorship program, creating a way to identify the young people who are going to come through and drive that. Because we might have to go through 10 years of getting rid of the crap that's in there already. But after that next 10 years, we need to have the people in there who are going to put our country first, are going to look after the issues that the people want, not what the bureaucrats want. How do we actually, okay, they tried with Doge and it was a bit of a whole, whether it was a failure or just a showboat, whatever. But we need to go through our government like that and figure out how we get back to focusing on the old Liberal principles on getting behind small businesses, helping people drive themselves as a country, have smaller government, but have smarter government. And to me,
I
that's going to come
and
through.
I think the Libertarians and Gerard's party would be perfect for that, and they could drive that change. I mean, getting back to where do we see it? I mean, we are seeing the rise of reform over in the UK, and things are going on in France. And I mean, you look at the Eastern European countries like Hungary and Poland, they've got new strong leadership over there. And Christine Anderson, that wonderful woman over in the EU, from Germany, I think she is. Things are changing, and it can happen here. I just don't see it happening in the near future. But we need a new party. I look, the Liberals are done. I can't see it. I wish people like Alex Antic and Matt Canavan would just leave and join. I mean, Gerard was in the Liberals. Why don't they all just get together and just put their egos aside? And,
How is Susan Lee still there?
abysmal. It
Yeah.
it's painful. I can't watch it anymore. It's just
She makes Albanese look good. I think to say.
and I am this whole gender thing, the woman thing. Oh, look, I had no time for that. I'm a
No.
merit-based person.
And that one thing Australia does have going for it. I was telling you a bit about the China stuff, the experiences I had when over there. And one of the things I found with Australian companies in general was they generally tried to find the easy way to get things done. They want to avoid risk, not manage risk. They are very hesitant to invest into things. The Americans are much more progressive in how they approach making things work. Australia tends to be more, not so much lucky country, but lazy country in that way, in many ways, I believe, personally. Not putting that in Gerri's words and my words on that. But the flip side of that is when America went through like their civil war. I was talking to a friend about this the other day. The closest we came to was the Eureka Stockade, and the Eureka Stockade had some pretty serious issues about it, but it lasted hours. It wasn't like we kind of almost got to the point where we go, oh, as a country, we tend to be a little bit like, oh, we couldn't be bothered.
Yeah.
It's like we got this
That
side of
would
us.
be that now let's put the barbecue on and
Exactly.
it is.
Which,
That's actually true.
which has some positives to it, very much so in avoiding major
Yes.
issues. But in saying that, we dropped the ball in a lot of ways. And when we think we're counting the world stage, we don't really. We have to be beating our drum a bit louder. And I do think that needs energy, and I do think that's going to come from our younger generation. And these are all things we need to explore and discuss. And I'm hoping on my little chat thing here to be able to talk to people from Labor, from Liberals, from all different sides, and just get things where we can talk about stuff. But I really appreciate what you've had to say, and I really love your Substacks. As I said, I'll be putting those links up there. Is there
Thank you.
anything that we haven't really covered? I mean, we can have another one of these chat sessions whenever you're ready for it. I'd love to chat to you
Yeah,
anytime.
might
So,
have another one another time. No, I think that's probably most of it now. But I mean, I think it'd be great to get some politicians on. I mean, I know one or two. I should ask them if they'll come on, and I'll spread this around. I'll share it
yeah,
round, and so
please
we
let them
can.
know. And I'm not going to take a side on. I've got my opinions, but it's more about just having people have a genuine conversation. I'm trying to treat this thing like we're just sitting down at the table and having a chat. And I think that's what we need to do. But then once we have a chat, we then need to figure out how we create action behind those chats and we actually move things forward.
That's right. And it's true because the left-right paradigm is dead. It is not left-right anymore. This is about saving a democracy, our country, and I think what you're doing is great, and you need to build on that. And that's how a lot of us who have become disenchanted have been. We may have been in either party. I mean, there's people who've left the Labor Party. I met them in UAP. Even the Greens. I mean, I had in my local area, I had one of the local stores who supported Greens with everything else, but over the vaccine issue, that was it. She supported me, and it doesn't. An issue like that, can be even though they were averse to Clive over the mining, that took a back seat. It was very interesting, really interesting. So I didn't think I'd get their support, and I did, absolutely, and she told everyone that she knew, not that voted.
Can I use this little opportunity to throw out my idea of utopia to you, which had never happened, but how I would love to wipe the slate clean and make the system work? I would like to see where there were no, you totally abolish political parties, right? But you have your electorates, and each electorate votes their member, and every citizen pays a small levy, which is actually the money that pays their member. So they get paid by their electorate to represent their electorate. And they might have to do surveys with their electorate online and everything else, but when they go into Parliament, they are the voice of the electorate, and they only get paid by the people they represent. So then all the politicians that get elected go into Parliament, and their job is to mainly take information back to their local community, get the feedback from their local community, and represent them. Then we have, instead of a ministry level of politicians, the Parliament organises to identify, interview, everything else, a bunch of experts. So if it's in the transport sector, you have someone who's out of that industry, who gets a certain good pay for what they do, which the country pays for, but they become the advisory board who come up with ideas. So if it's transport, they work with their network, they come up with an idea of what the country could do to get the train system better. Now, they can't implement that. They have to take that idea to the Parliament. And the Parliament takes those ideas back to their constituents, gets the idea, and the Parliament vote as all individual members representing their their constituents as to whether the ideas that the experts put together. Because one of the things that really annoys me is you get someone in charge of the education department who's never had anything to do with education. So it all becomes back to the bureaucrats to just keep doing the same old, same old. And if you had some experts up there coming up with some new ideas who can't twist the system because they can't make it happen, they have to pass it to the parliament to vote on it. That would be my idea of a system that goes back. I don't know if that's anything like the Greek or the Roman system or anything,
Well, it
but
is very much like direct democracy. That's what you're describing in a way. I mean, what I've said similar things. Well, I really like regionalisation. I think we should cut out one level of government for a start and have regionalisation, which is something during the 22 campaign, Craig talked about that. And I'd already not campaigned, but talked about that for years before. So I was really pleased to hear him raise that regionalisation. And it was sort of one of the policy areas that they talked about then. I think that needs to happen, and that because politicians should be closer, much closer to their constituents directly. And that because that would mean then rather than pushing everybody into the cities, we should be decentralising. But because that doesn't fit global agenda, because they want us to the cities, the whole World Economic Forum crap and all the rest of it. We need to be decentralised, more like we should have more inland cities like America does. I mean, I'm from Wagga originally, so it's a great regional city. And there was talk for that. I think it's growing now in the last lot of years, but it should be twice as big. There should be lots of them around the country. Then they should regionalise and then just have a person much closer, similar to what you're talking about. But of course, the argument you get from that is, oh, that wouldn't work, Geraldine, because you need to have a government. So if everybody's differing and not belonging to the parties, well, I don't think that that's an argument anymore. That argument's been blown out of the water with the two parties.
If you've got an issue being put forward by experts that comes to the parliament and you remove party lines, they're not there to work for the party, they're there to work for their electorate. So they go in and vote what their electorates want. Now, if it's 51 to 49, that means that 51% of the population want that to happen. That's democracy. That's how it works.
And maybe, hopefully, like you were saying before with the upcoming younger generation, that's something that they can work towards. But so look, I think, no, I'm with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time doing this. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed it too. Well, yes, we'll do it again, and we'll extend on that maybe in a few months' time, see if we've got any further down the track.
And I will keep devouring your Substack. So thank you for putting them up.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Okay. Thanks, Gerri.
Thanks, Nick.
Stay there. I just stopped the recording here.